Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia and I am one of the Ho Family Student Tour Guides at the Harvad Art Museums. And as you can see, today I have another makeup tutorial. On the docket today is François Boucher's portrait of the Marquise de Pompadour, Jeanne Antoinette Poisson, which dates to 1750 with some later additions. The painting is displayed on the second floor of the Harvad Art Museums in the Rococo and Neoclassicism in the 18th Century Gallery. Famously described as the godmother of the Rococo, the Marquise became the official mistress of King Louis XV in 1745, and the cameo on her wrist conspicuously signifies this relationship. She was a major patroness of the arts as well as of Enlightenment philosophers. I think of these tutorials as a sort of extended, close-looking exercise. So as I go through, I'm going to be describing what I see in the portrait and explaining how I'm going to express that on my own face. I'll also be sure to insert information about this work throughout the video, so make yourselves comfortable and let's jump right in. Part of what makes this an especially great painting for a makeup tutorial, I think, is the fact that makeup does play such a prominent, visible role in this painting. This isn't just any portrait of the Marquise de Pompadour, but specifically one which depicts her at her toilette, in the act of applying cosmetics. She is shown sitting in front of a mirror, holding a blush brush and a blush compact, and visible on the table in front of her is yet another compact and another fluffy puff. And of course she is wearing a substantial amount of makeup already. Her face and décolletage are a bright, opaque white, visibly lighter than her hands and forearms, and her cheeks bloom in this pretty pink pigment from the blush that she's holding, where you can still see that same pink pigment on the bristles of the brush in her left hand. And I will begin by applying that bright white base. I don't have a foundation that light, so I will be using a white face paint and applying it using a damp beauty sponge. The significance of makeup in this portrait is far from merely cosmetic. In 18th century France, as in today's society, makeup was bound up in issues of gender and class, the subject of debates both aesthetic and moral. For the Marquise de Pompadour and other ladies of the court, the toilette was a lengthy ceremonial performance in which they would slowly get dressed and have their hair and makeup done while entertaining a privileged audience. The Marquise would conduct her affairs, entertaining prominent intellectuals, diplomats, and courtiers in a demonstration of her social prestige. All right, and here we go. I think I am sufficiently pasty. As you saw, I took the white face paint through my eyebrows in order to lighten them, and I set everything with a pretty thick layer of powder in order to hopefully keep the face paint intact as I go over it with blush and other things later. And before I move on to those incredible rosy cheeks, I'm going to be doing a little bit of contouring to try to make my face look a little bit more similar to that of the Marquise de Pompadour. Now, obviously, she and I have very different facial features and bone structures. She has this kind of heart-shaped face, and I have an oval face with a wider jaw than she does, and she has a much higher nose bridge than I do. She also has these visible shadows at certain parts of her face, for instance, the left side of her nose bridge, the viewer's right, as well as her left temple and underneath her bottom lip. So I'm going to be using this taupish gray shadow and placing it at the corresponding areas of my own face. In makeup, as in painting, darkness creates recession, or the illusion of recession. So I'm also going to be using this powder to kind of chisel away the parts of my face which are wider than the Marquise de Pompadour's. This portrait draws an analogy between the art of painting and the art of the toilette as activities of studied artifice, of representation and self-representation. The Marquise has in hand the brush and the box of rouge with which she has already colored her cheeks, holding them much in the way that painters are shown holding their paintbrushes and palettes. The oil paint of the portrait is conflated with the cosmetic paint of the sitter. Boucher painted an image of the Marquise's face, and the Marquise de Pompadour herself painted her face. All right, so I think we're about done with the contour and the selective introduction of shadows. I forgot to mention this earlier, but I also went in and filled in parts of my hairline to make it more closely resemble the Marquise de Pompadour's. And I went in and drew some fine lines around my eyes because it looks like she has some lines underneath her eyes as well as eyelid creases that I don't have. And again, in order to do that, I used the same taupish gray powder to selectively introduce recession. And I went in with the same white face paint and a finer brush this time to introduce areas of brightness, of protrusion. So now I'm going to move on to the eyebrows. And of course, my own brows are still visible, but the Marquise de Pompadour's brows are longer than mine and rounder as well. Mine are somewhat angular. So I'm just going to go in with this light blonde eyebrow pencil and kind of manipulate the shape of my brows to make them look more like the Pompadours. The portrait seems to take on the tone of an artist's self-portrait, the mirror perhaps a stand-in for a canvas from which the Marquise is turned. Wonderful. I think the brows are close enough, and so with all that done, we can move on to the fun part, the cheeks. There is an extravagant amount of blush on her cheeks, and it's not merely confined to the apples of her cheeks or just her cheekbones, but rather spreads across the sides of her face in a kind of triangular formation. So I'm going to go in with this bright pink blush that I have on hand and apply it in that triangular shape. At the time that this portrait was created, the Marquise de Pompadour was no longer the eminent beauty depicted in this likeness. She was suffering from a variety of physical ailments that robbed her of her porcelain complexion and healthy figure. And here we go. I look pretty remarkable in person right now. There is a fleck of brighter or more saturated reddish pink on the Marquise de Pompadour's left cheek. So I've tried to capture that here. It's a little bit hard to tell in this lighting right now, but nevertheless, we have achieved those bright pink cheeks. So now I think the only thing left to do is the lips. Her lips are a beautiful rosy pink, glassy and shiny as if she's wearing gloss. But before I can begin to apply any kind of lip product, I actually need to adjust the shape of my bottom lip. It looks like her bottom lip is shorter than her top lip. And so I'm going to take my handy dandy white face paint and conceal the outer corners of my bottom lip to try to make it look shorter. This portrait has been read as an effort on the part of the Marquise to idealize and rejuvenate herself, a function common to almost all portraiture of the period, but perhaps especially resonant here, for as her health visibly declined, the Marquise applied copious layers of makeup to achieve those same goals. My lips are extraordinarily dry, very uncomfortable, but no matter, beauty is pain. Now I'll use a kind of pinkish lipstick and go over that with another gloss. And here you have the finished look. And what a look indeed. I hope you enjoyed watching me mimic 18th century French cosmetic trends, and I hope you learned something from today's video. Do let us know if there are any other works of art that you'd like to see turned into a makeup tutorial, and as always, let us know if you ever tried to recreate this look at home. It's always a pleasure to look at art in this way and produce these videos, so thank you very much for watching and for staying engaged with the Harvard Art Museums. Until next time.